Redditors who were pronounced dead and resuscitated. What did you go through mentally while being pronounced dead? It felt like I was in a long tunnel, just floating and feeling very tired. I remember falling asleep and having a dream that I was in the kitchen in the house where I grew up in and my dad was cooking breakfast. I could hear a commotion and chaos at one end, and at the other end there was a warm light that felt peaceful. Then all of a sudden I was abruptly in the chaos of an emergency room. I was not pronounced dead, but very close. I thought I had the flu. My husband and I had a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old baby at the time, so I quarantined in our room and he would check on me every few hours. He would make sure I constantly was pushing fluids, water and Pedialyte, and taking Dayquil, NyQuil 1 every 12 hours to not overdo it. You can take 2 capsules at the time, but we stuck with 1 because I rarely even take Tylenol. He put the kids to bed around 9 p.m. and came in to check on me. I was freezing cold to the touch, non-responsive, white as a ghost. I am very pale already but was brand new white sheets white. He checked my temp and it was 104, even though I was so cold. He rushed me to the ER. I was so out of it I felt like I was on heavy drugs. I have only tried weed, but I am telling you I felt like someone shot me up with some serious shit. I had no feeling in my body whatsoever. I knew who people were and I could hear what was going on, but I was just in my own mind in La La Land. I actually had a really bad UTI that traveled to my kidneys and started shutting down my liver. I have never had a UTI before, and my pee didn't smell, so I never ever thought to check my pee color. In the ER my pee was the darkest brown I have ever seen. I was rushed to a NICU and was under for 6 days. I do not remember anything but feeling at peace. I finally came to and I didn't remember being brought to the ER or put into the ICU. My last memory was me falling asleep at home in bed. It was not scary at all. The scariest part was waking up in the ICU and realizing I almost left my husband and 2 small children behind while I slept for eternity. That really stung deep. I check my pee every time I piss now. Edit, I was only 23, I am 30 now and it still terrifies me. A frat brother was clinically dead 45 seconds. Overdosed on Xanax. The experience changed his life. He never used drugs again. He said he saw himself over the hospital bed and the nurses working. He said as he slowly floated through the roof, a peaceful feeling better than any drug took over. He said you feel free of all worry and regret. He saw the white light allegedly and a few family members before they said it wasn't his time. He floated back to his body. He was never the same again and used to be atheist. Edit, I can't tell you all what I believe for sure or if he really experienced it. The raw emotion and the hospital records confirm to me he experienced something or that he was at least dead. He has never lied to me and the effect on him was palpable. Both of us had our own issues at FSU. I also went overboard, so now I don't enjoy lots of drugs. Used to be top party school in the nation, so it was hard to focus, so what's important? Felt like third-person security camera footage of my body, then slowly zooming out and rising up, felt really cold, and then I started hearing really loud clanging sounds and woke up in the ambulance to the sound of the gurney bouncing on a rough road. It was surreal. I haven't feared death since then, tbh. It was almost 6 years ago and I still think about it a few times a month. I had a seizure when I was young and I had a very similar experience. I had the third-person security camera effect. It was rotating above looking down at me. I could also hear what I can only describe as the sound of heavy rain on stone. It was a very strange experience. I was around 5 years old when I almost internally bled to death from a bad virus. I experienced what I could only describe as maybe some weird limbo in between heaven. It's weird because I don't think I even had a concept of heaven at that point unless it's something I saw in a cartoon. I was transported to my grandparents' house except there was no walls. Everything was hanging on the walls like normal, but it was floating in midair. No one was home, but I remember just wandering around the house looking at everything floating. Then it switched to me at my elementary school. Again, there was no one around. Almost abandoned. Except I saw another girl around my same age. My memory is a bit foggy of what she told me, but I know she had passed away and I think she was trying to get to heaven. We ended up being in some beautiful area, gorgeous hills with green grass and beautiful trees everywhere with blue skies. I was standing next to a tree and kept rubbing the leaves. As long as I kept rubbing the leaves, I wouldn't pass away completely. I remember then being almost literally in the sky. There was a huge giant tree log that I wasn't allowed to pass unless I was ready to leave Earth. If I decided to go over it, I would basically be with God, although I don't remember thinking that word as a kid. It was just like you would be with some loving energy. I remember not wanting to cross because I didn't want to leave my parents yet. And that was it. I woke back up from falling unconscious suddenly as I was hemorrhaging. When my mom was dying, she kept talking to my grandma, who had passed a year before. Then she talked to her brother, who had died 10 years earlier. The thing is, my mum never talked about her brother in normal life because his death was so traumatic for her. But she was having a full-on conversation with her brother and my grandmother, and then kept mentioning how they were watching the beautiful cardinals fly around. It changed my whole entire perspective on death. It was so real. Same thing happened to my grandpa when he died. A couple minutes before it happened, he started talking about his mum, and eventually to his mum. She had been dead 30+ years, and we never heard him talking about her. It was eerie, but comforting knowing his last moments were his family around him, both in this world and whatever other dimension his mum was at. As my family was saying goodbye to me, I remember seeing 3 shadow people at the foot of the hospital bed. Me thinking it was family, I asked who are they. My mother then proceeds to tell me they were angels, but I perceived them as my dead relatives that to bring me to the other side. The nurses then proceeded to put me under anesthesia so the doctors could hopefully get my brain to stop bleeding. They were successful and I'm still here. I was told later on that they lost me during the surgery, but I would have never known that on my own. I went under then woke up, that's all I knew. Not me but my husband. This happened just a few weeks ago on December 6th. We were in our room chilling and talking about going to luncheons, doing some Christmas shopping. As I got up to get dressed, he started breathing funny. I look over and his arms are seized up and eyes wide. He's not responding to me at all. As I'm on the phone with 911, he stopped breathing. I performed CPR with their helpful instructions from the dispatcher for 7 minutes until the paramedics arrived. Once they got here, they continued CPR and had to defib him twice. When they finally got him in the ambulance, they had him intubated and a pulse going again. He was in the cardiac ECMO for 5 days. Only intubated for about 24 hours before they woke him up from heavy sedation. They did loads of tests. Nothing wrong with his heart, but it was ruled a sudden cardiac arrest. On that 5th day he went in for surgery to have an ICD put in and was transferred out of ICU. He was released on the 6th day. He remembers very little of the whole ordeal. Doesn't remember it happening or how long he was there. His memory of being in the hospital is hazy. But he's doing great. Tired and healing but alive, and I had him home for Christmas. He may not remember, but I always will. Scariest 6 days of my life. Having my healthy 31-year-old husband, the love of my life, almost die in front of me is something I'll never forget.